Colin Morris, Head of Trains for Southern. So I'm responsible for all the train crew on Southern, about 1,500 people, all our drivers and conductors and all their associated managers. Well, clearly with train crew, people, especially drivers, are in a fairly confined space in a train cab and on a train seat for a considerable number of hours each day and for several days at a time. And sitting anywhere in that space and having to reach for various controls, etc., has its difficulties and presents some people with some issues. We're basically talking drivers in this context, so we've got about 950 drivers. Obviously there are those who there's no effect whatsoever, in fact probably the majority, but a number do experience some difficulties. We've got various different fleets of rolling stock. Some have different difficulties with different fleets. Some find seats uncomfortable, sometimes the depression of the foot pedal is uncomfortable, sometimes the reach to various controls is uncomfortable. And of course there's a big difference between feeling uncomfortable and any potentially more serious issues like back strains or any other sort of musculoskeletal problems. So a complete cross-section really from people who are not affected at all to people who potentially have quite a lot of difficulty. If you want me to give a view of how serious it is, we've obviously got a lot of drivers, just under 1,000 drivers. It would be difficult to put a figure on it, but people have varying different degrees of discomfort or not with driving cabs. They're obviously a very difficult thing to change because they're within the fabric of the makeup of the vehicle itself, and there are certain controls and equipment that you need to fit into a cab. So we're working with quite a limited, scope for change, really. I think it's important not to knee-jerk into reacting to what is basically anecdote at the time. If a number of your drivers or any other members of staff come and say they have some issues, I think the important thing is to step back, understand what their issues are. What we did on Southern was to employ an ergonomics specialist. We're not expert in this field. It's quite a complex field, much more complex probably than I thought when we started. But the ergonomics specialist is able to take all sorts of measurements of cabs, view people at work using video, mock up various scenarios and have people test them out. And of course our 950 drivers are of all different shapes and sizes, and that presents some difficulty in itself. I think if we're honest, will we ever have something that completely satisfies everyone? Maybe not. Our important end result is to have something that is suitable for the highest number of people we can. One of the interesting things that came out of that survey was that actually over 98% of our drivers had never had any briefing, training or suggestions as to how best to sit, their posture. And as you know, if you're sitting in an office chair or on an aircraft or anything, posture is quite important. There is plenty of research into what a good posture looks like and how upright you should be and your arms level and all that sort of thing. So we spent a considerable time putting together a DVD with our ergonomics specialist around posture and how best to adjust the seat on various fleet and how best to sit in that seat, and also some exercises to do. If you travel on aircraft, especially long haul, quite often you'll be asked to do some exercises to keep your blood circulation going and just generally keep yourself in shape. And it's no different on a train, but to be fair, we hadn't really told our train crew that. So we put together a DVD with all that on, issued it to every member of every driver with a letter. And the really important thing I should say is all the way through this we were involving the union. So it was a real joint approach, and indeed the letter that went with the DVD was jointly issued from the company and the union representatives to ensure that everybody had complete buy-in to it. The DVD has sections for each of the types of fleet that we operate. so you can quickly navigate your way around and only look at the parts that are relevant to yourself. Is it working? It's a bit early to say. What I would say is that the whole project thus far has driven a completely different specification for the latest train that we're ordering. So our new trains that turn up later this year will have a new seat, which has been visited and trialled in a mock-up situation, again under proper survey conditions with a number of drivers, and scored in many respects, and scored much higher than our current seat. So it will have a new seat, and it will also have a lighter DSD pedal, so the downforce required to operate that is considerably lighter than the current downforce, and of course all those things can impact on your muscular issues within legs and back. So yes, I think without this project we wouldn't have got to that stage with our new rolling stock. This is a live issue, it's an ongoing issue. Clearly new seats and changes to cabs is an expensive thing. That's not to say we're not doing it, but it's expensive. We, as I say, we've done it on the new trains. We need to absolutely check that works, and we'll do that by some sort of detailed feedback from people. And then we need to decide where we go ultimately, if and when we're able to change anything on other fleets. There is some work going on some of our other fleets to change the desk layout, for example, on one of our older fleets. And again, that's come out of ergonomic work and assessment, particularly with taller drivers. I think it's important to recognise there's only so much that a company can do, and like anybody, whether you're a driver or any other role you perform, there's certainly an element of your own personal responsibility to ensure your general level of fitness and your suitability for the environment you're going to be working in. Clearly that can be in terms of controlling your weight or your diet, your general lifestyle, ensuring you get enough sleep. All these things go to help you, and the more supple you are and the more exercise you take, the more likely you are to be able to adapt yourself to whatever environment you're working in. We do give, particularly train crew, a fair bit of lifestyle advice. It's certainly not intended to be patronising or difficult. I think we have to recognise that particularly train crew and some other roles where there's some fairly extreme shifts involved, and sometimes a number of days work before you have rest days, you do need to look after yourself. And again, I don't think there's any different to, say, an airline crew. I'm sure have similar advice. So yeah, it's certainly not intended to be patronising, it's intended to be supportive and helpful. Ultimately, we all want the same thing. We all want a safe railway that people are happy in the environment they're operating in. So it's a big issue, but take it steadily and take specialist advice would be my suggestion.
So the case study we've just heard from Colin Morris from Southern shows about how challenging it can be for changing and improving the cab ergonomics. A lot of good work is going on in this area. A British standard, a European standard is in preparation. So that's for the new build, but retrofitting new equipment into cabs is not easy. And what this example shows, this case study shows, is that doing it properly, taking time, taking surveys, enlisting the support of ergonomics specialists pays dividends. It's helpful. You need to do mock-ups and surveys to get a good understanding of what the issues are and a very good understanding of how you can actually resolve the issue and make things better. And it's very important in that situation to enlist the help and the involvement of the employee or health and safety reps, because they know, and having worked the trains, what the issues are and what the challenges are and how best to actually improve things. So whether it's the DSD foot pedal or whether it's the positioning of new pieces of equipment going into the cab, it's important that this is given a thorough, proper assessment